It wasn't just official, it radiated an aura of absolute authority. The paper was thick, textured, almost ancient, and in the top right corner, a crimson stamp glared, "Top Secret, Eyes Only." My heart did a quick stutter. I wasn't a spy. I wasn't a government contractor. I barely remembered to pay my utility bills on time. I tore it open, my fingers trembling slightly. Inside, a single sheet of heavy parchment. No letterhead, no greeting. Just a stark, minimalist message. Mr. Alexander Miller, your exceptional contributions to Project Stardust through your independent research on quantum entanglement harmonics have come to our attention. Your expertise is required. Report to the coordinates provided below on date at 0600 hours. Failure to comply will be considered a matter of national security. Below it, a set of geographical coordinates, an alphanumeric code, and a name. Dr. Evelyn Reed. There was also a single chilling instruction. Burn this document immediately after memorization. My mind raced. Quantum entanglement harmonics? That was my pet project, a theoretical framework I'd been developing in my spare time, posting obscure papers under a pseudonym on academic forums. It explored how specific harmonic frequencies could influence quantum states, potentially allowing for instantaneous, non-local communication or even manipulation of matter. It was purely theoretical, bordering on science fiction. How in the hell did they know about it? I stared at the coordinates. They pointed somewhere deep in the Nevada desert, far from any major city. Far from anything, really. My mind immediately jumped to the most obvious, the most infamous location in Nevada associated with government secrets and things that fly. Area 51. Could it be? The thought sent a jolt of fear and exhilarating curiosity through me. This was the stuff of legends, of late-night talk shows and fringe documentaries. I reread the coordinates, memorizing them. Then, with a heavy heart and a profound sense of foreboding, I took a lighter from my drawer. The flame licked at the heavy paper, curling its edges, turning the stark words into ash. As the last embers died, so did my old life. I had no idea what Project Stardust was or why they wanted me, but I knew with absolute certainty that my world was about to change forever. The desert was calling, and I had no choice but to answer.
As we drove deeper into the vast, desolate landscape, the mountains in the distance seemed to ripple in the heat haze. This wasn't the romanticized desert of westerns. This was a place of secrets, of silence, of endless, watchful skies. My phone had lost signal hours ago, my smartwatch was dead, and the world I knew felt like a distant memory, fading with every mile. I tried to rationalize it, to convince myself this was some elaborate recruitment for a cutting-edge tech company, a highly secretive black ops division. But the top secret stamp, the burning of the letter, the sheer clandestine nature of it all, it screamed something else, something far beyond corporate espionage. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, baking the metal of the SUV. We passed no other vehicles, no signs of life, just an occasional dust devil spiraling across the horizon. My thoughts were a whirlwind of excitement and apprehension. What if this was all a mistake? What if I was walking into something I couldn't walk out of? I thought about my parents, my friends, the life I'd abruptly left behind. Would anyone ever know where I went? A chilling thought, quickly pushed aside by the overriding current of curiosity that had always defined me. Finally, the SUV veered off the paved road onto a dirt track, kicking up a plume of red dust. In the distance, almost indistinguishable from the desert floor, I saw it. A fence. Not just any fence, but a formidable barrier of razor wire and reinforced steel, stretching endlessly in both directions, topped with motion sensors and cameras that seemed to silently track our approach. Beyond it, a low, sprawling complex of buildings camouflaged against the ochre landscape, almost invisible to the untrained eye. There were no flags, no signs, no identifying markers, just an oppressive sense of hidden power. As we neared a heavily fortified gate, a guard booth materialized, manned by two figures in tactical gear, their faces obscured by dark visors. They carried rifles that looked far too serious for a welcoming committee. The driver lowered his window, exchanged a series of codes and whispered confirmations, and after what felt like an eternity, the massive steel gate slowly, ponderously slid open with a low hydraulic groan. We drove through. The gate closed behind us with a resounding thud, severing my last tangible link to the outside world. The air inside the perimeter felt different, charged with a palpable tension. This wasn't just a military base. It was a sanctuary of the unknown, a fortress built around secrets that could reshape humanity. As the SUV continued its silent journey towards the heart of the complex, I pressed my face against the cool glass, my breath fogging the window. My mind struggled to process the reality. I was now inside, truly inside, whatever Area 51 truly was, and Project Stardust awaited. A shiver ran down my spine, a mix of fear and an undeniable, powerful sense of destiny. There was no turning back. Finally, we arrived at a heavy blast-proof door, emblazoned with a single stylized symbol, a cluster of stars encircled by a delicate, ethereal ring, the insignia of Project Stardust. The door hissed open, revealing a sight that stole my breath and eradicated any lingering doubts about what I'd gotten myself into. We stepped into an enormous, cavernous space, meticulously carved out of the solid rock. The walls gleamed with polished, unknown metals, reflecting the brilliant yet sterile white light that flooded the cavern. And in the center, dominating the entire space, was it. Not a piece of technology I recognized, not even something I could readily describe with human terms. It was a structure, impossibly smooth and seamless, a metallic obsidian that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, yet occasionally pulsed with a faint internal azure glow. It was roughly disc-shaped, but with an organic fluidity to its form, as if it had grown rather than been built. This was no human creation. This was undeniably, unequivocally alien. Scientists in full white hazmat suits moved with purpose around it, their faces obscured by visors, their movements precise and controlled. They operated equipment I'd only ever seen in conceptual diagrams, shimmering holographic interfaces, tools that emitted silent beams of light, and sensors that seemed to read the very fabric of space-time. This was the cutting edge, far beyond anything public science had even dreamed of. A voice cut through the hum of machinery. "Mr. Miller, I presume?" I turned to see a woman approaching, her stride confident and authoritative. She was slender, with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing even through her visor. Her gray hair was pulled back tightly, giving her almost a severe look. This had to be Dr. Evelyn Reed. "Dr. Reed," I managed, my voice a little hoarse, my gaze still drawn back to the alien artifact. "Welcome to Project Stardust," she said, her voice calm, yet resonating with an undercurrent of deep knowledge and unwavering resolve. "Forgive the unconventional recruitment, but time is a luxury we no longer possess. Your work on quantum entanglement harmonics, particularly your hypotheses on non-local resonance fields, is not merely theoretical, Mr. Miller. It is foundational to understanding what you see before you." She gestured towards the shimmering dark object. "This is designated Object 01, our primary subject of study. It arrived on Earth 67 years ago during the Roswell incident. What the public knows is a fabrication. What we know is merely the tip of a cosmic iceberg. And your theories, Mr. Miller, might just be the key to navigating its depths." The Roswell incident. My mind reeled. So the rumors were true. And this wasn't just a crash site. This was an ongoing, active engagement with something utterly beyond human comprehension. My theoretical physics, my obscure academic papers, had just landed me at the epicenter of humanity's greatest secret. My life as I knew it was truly over. My new reality was Project Stardust, and the alien enigma pulsing silently before me.
Dr. Reed became my mentor, a stern but undeniably brilliant guide. She explained that Object 01 wasn't merely a crashed vessel, it was a complex, sentient system. The initial attempts by human scientists to interact with it had been clumsy, akin to trying to communicate with a supercomputer using only grunts and hand gestures. My theories, however, offered a new pathway. We believe Object 01 communicates through resonant frequency patterns, Dr. Reed explained one evening, standing before a vast holographic display. The display shimmered with intricate multi-layered light patterns that shifted and evolved with an ethereal grace. Your work on entanglement harmonics suggests a means to not just observe these patterns, but to engage with them, to create a reciprocal loop. I spent countless hours immersed in the data, poring over centuries of theoretical physics, arcane mathematics, and baffling energy signatures emanating from Object 01. My sleep was minimal, fueled by synthetic coffee and the sheer intoxicating thrill of discovery. This was beyond any dream I'd ever had. I was applying my most abstract theories to real, tangible alien technology. One afternoon, standing before a console humming with alien data, I saw it. A particular sequence of light pulses, a fleeting harmonic resonance that matched one of my most audacious theoretical predictions for non-local communication. It was so subtle, so brief, that others had dismissed it as background noise, but I felt a profound, almost instinctive connection to it. "Dr. Reed," I called out, my voice cracking with excitement. "Look at this, sequence Tau 7. If we amplify the phase inversion at the fifth harmonic, it should create a localized entanglement field." She rushed over, her sharp eyes scanning the holographic display. Her expression, usually stoic, softened with a flicker of intense interest. "Miller, you might be onto something. Run the simulation, cautiously." With trembling hands, I input the parameters. The lab held its breath. The holographic display intensified, the complex light patterns swirling faster and then coalescing into a single, brilliant point of azure light. And then, from Object 01 itself, came a response. The azure light pulsed directly at me, and I felt a connection, a bridge forming between my mind and whatever sentient intelligence resided within Object 01. It wasn't speaking, it was imparting, sharing, revealing, and within that deluge of information, amidst the cosmic beauty and sorrow, a singular, terrifying realization began to form. The aliens weren't just here to visit, they weren't here to conquer, they were here for something far more insidious, something that had been set in motion long before humanity even dreamed of looking at the stars. Project Stardust wasn't about understanding the aliens, it was about understanding their agenda, and I, Alex Miller, had just become the first human to truly listen. The implications were staggering, and a chilling fear began to set in. But as the fog cleared, fragments began to coalesce, not just cosmic beauty, but a darker, more troubling narrative. The Greys, the stereotypical big-headed, large-eyed aliens of pop culture, were real. And they weren't just the pilots of Object 01, they were the architects of a millennial-long deception. Through the fragmented data, I started to piece together their story, their true purpose. They weren't a conquering force in the traditional sense, they were something far more insidious. Genetic engineers, cosmic farmers. Their own civilization, I understood, had reached a stagnant dead end, ravaged by genetic decay and a loss of vitality. They sought rejuvenation, fresh genetic stock, new avenues for evolution,
and they found it in fledgling civilizations like ours. Earth, I realized with a growing horror, was one of many gardens they had cultivated across the galaxy. They had been observing, guiding, subtly influencing human evolution for tens of thousands of years, not with overt displays of power, but through discrete interventions, technological gifts presented as divine inspiration, and crucially, through genetic sampling and manipulation. The abductions, the strange phenomena, the cattle mutilations, these weren't random occurrences, they were part of a systematic, long-term project, a harvest. Dr. Reed listened intently, her expression unreadable. She didn't dismiss my claims. In fact, there was a grim recognition in her eyes, as if she'd suspected this all along. "And Project Stardust," she asked, "what is our role in their grand design?" "That's the chilling part," I replied, a cold dread settling in my stomach. Object 01 isn't just a communication device. It's a beacon, a harvester, and a portal. It's designed to accelerate a specific evolutionary path for humanity, a path that makes us more compatible with their genetic needs. And it also facilitates the transfer of human consciousness or genetic material to wherever they truly are. The Greys weren't truly here. They were operating remotely through their technology, through Object 01. It was a sophisticated galaxy-spanning operation, and we were just another petri dish. The alliance that some within Project Stardust believed we had formed with them was a carefully constructed illusion. We weren't collaborators. We were at best unwitting participants in our own genetic modification, and at worst, livestock. The profound implications of this revelation crushed me. Every UFO sighting, every ancient myth of sky gods, every unexplained technological leap in human history, it all clicked into place, painted with the cold, calculating brushstrokes of the Greys. Humanity wasn't alone in the universe. We were merely another.
I couldn't just stand by. The thought of humanity being a glorified genetic farm, unknowingly steered towards an alien agenda, was unbearable. I had to know more, to find irrefutable proof, something beyond the subjective experience of the message from Object 01. If the Greys had been influencing us for millennia, there had to be records, traces, buried within the mountain of classified data I now had access to. My skills as a software engineer, once a path to lucrative tech startups, now became my most dangerous weapon. Late nights became my secret battlefield. While others slept, or ostensibly did, I delved into the network of Project Stardust. The security was formidable, a multi-layered labyrinth of encryption and firewalls designed by the best minds on Earth. But I wasn't just any mind. I had glimpsed alien thought patterns, interacted with a non-human logic. That exposure, I realized, had subtly rewired my own processing. I began to see patterns in the code, loopholes in the algorithms, a certain alien elegance in the system's vulnerabilities that no human firewall designer could anticipate. I was searching for files, for protocols, for anything that explicitly detailed the true nature of the alliance. I bypassed encrypted logs, accessed restricted archives, my fingers flying across the keyboard, a phantom in the digital realm. The air in the server room, usually cool and clinical, felt heavy, charged with the electricity of forbidden knowledge. Each line of code cracked, each unauthorized access sent a jolt of adrenaline mixed with pure terror through me. If I was caught, the consequences would be unimaginable. Then I found it. Buried deep within a rarely accessed historical archive, tagged with a cryptic alphanumeric string that only my rewired brain could recognize as significant, was a series of files. They weren't in English or any human language. They were a combination of complex mathematical equations, intricate diagrams, and an alien script that resonated with the same frequency patterns I'd experienced from Object 01. It was a language of light, of energy, a universal blueprint. One file in particular displayed ancient cave paintings from cultures across the globe, Egypt, Mesopotamia, the Americas, all depicting figures strikingly similar to the Greys, interacting with early humans, often bestowing gifts or receiving reverence. These weren't mere myths. They were historical records, preserved by the Greys themselves, a cosmic ledger of their ongoing experiment. The gods of antiquity, the angels in sacred texts, the little green men of modern folklore, all were manifestations of their subtle, pervasive influence. My screen filled with images of Earth's past, seen through their cold, calculating eyes. Humanity, a magnificent, vibrant experiment, had been quietly, expertly steered. And Project Stardust, our most advanced scientific endeavor, was not designed to stop them. It was, in its deepest, darkest purpose, simply the final phase of their harvest. I felt a cold, crushing weight descend upon me. The deception was complete, and I was now holding the damning evidence. The world as I knew it was a lie, and I was trapped in its core. It wasn't mind control in the crude sense of forcing us to do their bidding directly. Instead, it was a more sophisticated, insidious form of neuro-linguistic programming woven into our very biology. Certain resonant frequencies, certain visual and auditory triggers embedded deep into our subconscious over generations could activate specific responses, steer collective thought, or even induce a state of passive compliance. It's why humanity, despite its inherent drive for freedom, often seemed to accept the unacceptable, to ignore the glaring inconsistencies in its own history. We were being nudged subtly towards a desired future, a future where we would willingly integrate into their larger, dying civilization. This wasn't just ancient history, it was active. The message I'd received from Object 01 wasn't just information, it was a deeper activation. My mind, now resonating with the alien frequencies, was both an asset and a terrifying liability. I could understand them, but was I also becoming more susceptible to their influence? The paranoia clawed at me. Were my own thoughts truly mine? Or had I been subtly reprogrammed, a sleeper agent unaware of his own mission? I had to confront Dr. Reed. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. I gathered the decrypted files, the translated schematics, the historical blueprints of the sleeper protocol, storing them on an encrypted data chip, a last-ditch effort to preserve the truth. I found her in her private office, a Spartan room devoid of personal touches. She looked up from her terminal as I entered, her gaze as sharp and unyielding as ever. "Mr. Miller," she said, her voice betraying no surprise. "You look as though you've seen a ghost, or perhaps a few billion years of galactic history." I didn't waste time. "Dr. Reed, we need to talk. About the Greys, about Project Stardust, about the Sleeper Protocol." I pushed the data chip across her desk. "They're not our allies. We're their experiment. We're being harvested subtly, neurologically, genetically. And Object 01 is the instrument of our ultimate assimilation." She picked up the chip, her fingers tracing its edges. A long, silent stretch between us, broken only by the hum of the ventilation system. Her eyes, usually so cold and analytical, held a flicker of something I couldn't quite place. Resignation? Sadness? Or something far more complex? My blood ran cold. You knew? And you let this happen?"
You're a part of this deception? She shook her head slowly. It's not that simple. When Object 01 crashed, we found not just alien technology, but fragments of their message, their history. The full truth of the Sleeper Protocol, of their intentions, became horrifyingly clear. The highest levels of government were faced with an impossible choice. Fight a species technologically superior to anything we could imagine? A species that had already suddenly infiltrated our very biology? Or try to mitigate, to control, to find a way to survive, even if it meant playing their game? Her gaze met mine, filled with a profound, almost ancient sorrow. Project Stardust isn't about helping the Greys, Alex. It's about managing the harvest. It's about buying humanity time. We've been studying their methods, trying to understand the Sleeper Protocol, hoping to find a way to break free, to awaken humanity before it's too late. But every step we take is monitored. Every breakthrough we make, they adapt. We are caught in a cosmic chess match, and the stakes are the very soul of humanity. The weight of her words, the crushing reality of what she confessed, nearly brought me to my knees. Project Stardust, the beacon of human ingenuity, was nothing more than a desperate, silent resistance, a last-ditch effort against an enemy we couldn't even truly see. And I, Alex Miller, had just walked into the heart of the battlefield, completely unaware of the war that had already been raging for millennia. The final, terrifying realization began to settle. My exceptional contributions weren't just about understanding the alien message. They were about potentially turning the tide, or perhaps simply becoming another pawn in a game already lost.
Dr. Reed's confession left me reeling, but also, paradoxically, with a surge of renewed purpose. The illusion of a benign alien presence had been shattered, replaced by a grim reality, but also by the truth of a silent resistance. We weren't collaborators, we were fighters, operating in the shadows, using the enemy's own tools against them. My theories on quantum entanglement harmonics, which had initially drawn me into Project Stardust, now took on a terrifying new significance. "How long have you been trying to counter the Sleeper Protocol?" I asked, my voice hoarse, the initial shock giving way to a fierce determination. "Decades," she replied, her gaze fixed on the data chip I'd given her. "We've made incremental progress, understanding their frequency patterns, identifying the triggers, but every time we get close to a breakthrough, they adapt. It's like trying to outwit a superorganism that can read your every thought, every intention." "But I resonated with Object 01, I argued, remembering the overwhelming download of information. "I accessed their core programming. If we can understand how that connection was made, how to filter their influence, perhaps we can reverse it, create our own counter-frequency, a wake-up call." Her eyes, which had seemed so weary, now sparked with a cautious hope. "That's exactly what your unique neurological response suggests, Alex. You're not just interpreting their message, you're transmitting. You're a two-way conduit. We believe that by carefully modulating your resonance, we could potentially introduce a firewall into the Sleeper Protocol, a universal counter-frequency that could awaken a percentage of the human population, breaking the cycle of passive compliance." The idea was audacious, terrifying, and exhilarating. To use the very mechanism of their control against them, to weaponize my own consciousness. It felt like playing God, but with the fate of humanity hanging in the balance, who was I to refuse? For the next several weeks, Project Stardust became a desperate race against time. Dr. Reed and I worked tirelessly, fueled by caffeine and an almost manic sense of urgency. We designed intricate experiments, pushing the boundaries of quantum physics and neuroscience. My workstation, once a realm of abstract theoretical models, became a crucible for humanity's last hope. We integrated the alien tech with our own,
creating a hybrid system designed to amplify my unique resonance, to weaponize the very connection the Greys had unwittingly forged with me. The day came for the first test of the counter protocol. The entire facility was on high alert. I was strapped into a neural interface chair, wires connecting my temples to a complex array of human and alien technology. Dr. Reed stood at the main console, her face etched with a mixture of fear and resolve. The air hummed with barely contained energy. "Initiating neural synchronicity," Dr. Reed announced, her voice tight. "Alex, focus on the core frequency, filter the noise, project the intent, awareness, freedom." I closed my eyes, focusing on the deep, rhythmic hum of Object 01, trying to find that specific harmonic frequency that allowed communication. But this time, instead of receiving, I was pushing. I visualized a wave, a pure, unadulterated thought of freedom washing over the planet, gently nudging the dormant parts of the human mind. The task was monumental, an attempt to override millennia of subtle programming with a single desperate broadcast. A blinding flash of azure light erupted from Object 01, far more intense than anything before. A high-pitched whine filled the cavern, vibrating through my very bones. I felt a searing pain behind my eyes, as if my brain was being torn apart and reassembled. The sensation was overwhelming, the pure force of the alien technology pushing back, resisting my attempt to subvert it. I screamed, the sound lost in the growing roar of the energy. This wasn't just a broadcast, it was a battle for the minds of billions, and I was the fragile bridge between two vastly different realities, risking everything to give humanity a fighting chance. I slumped forward in the neural chair, utterly spent. My head throbbed, and a thin trickle of blood ran from my nostril, staining the sterile white lab coat. My vision swam, but I was alive. Exhausted, traumatized, but alive. Dr. Reed was at my side in an instant, her hands deftly disconnecting the wires, her expression a mix of professional concern and immense personal relief. "Alex, can you hear me? Report." I took a shuddering breath. I think so. It was a push, a resistance, but I broke through. For a moment, I felt a connection, not just to Object 01, but to everything. "Vital stabilizing," a voice from the console announced, relieving some of the tension in the room. Dr. Reed helped me out of the chair, guiding me to a medical cot. We detected a significant energy spike, a unique frequency signature broadcast directly from Object 01, unlike anything we've ever seen. It was brief, but powerful. She paused, her gaze fixed on me. "What did you feel, Alex? Was it enough?" I closed my eyes, trying to recall the overwhelming experience. Beyond the pain, beyond the fear, there was a fleeting moment of clarity, a profound sense of connection to a vast, sleeping consciousness. I had pushed the counter-frequency, a subtle whisper of awareness, into the collective human subconscious. It wasn't a universal wake-up call, not yet, but it was a beginning, a seed of doubt planted. The room was silent, the weight of my words hanging heavy in the air. This wasn't the cinematic, instant liberation of humanity, but a slow, arduous process. Yet it was progress. It was hope. "So, it worked," Dr. Reed whispered, a slow smile spreading across her weary face. "You opened a door, a very small door, but a door nonetheless." Over the next several days, reports began to trickle in from Project Stardust's vast network of covert observation posts across the globe. Small, seemingly unrelated incidents, a sudden surge in viewership for fringe documentaries, a rise in internet searches for unexplained phenomena in specific regions, and an unusual number of people reporting vivid, unsettling dreams of geometric patterns and unspoken truths. Individually, they were dismissed as anomalies. Collectively, for those of us within Project Stardust, they were the faint, promising echoes of the awakening. My broadcast hadn't freed humanity instantly, but it had planted the seeds of skepticism, of independent thought in those most receptive. It had created a subtle disruption in the Greys' millennia-old programming. We had bought humanity a fighting chance, a precious window of opportunity to see the truth. The war wasn't over. In fact, it had just truly begun. But now, humanity had a secret weapon, the dawning awareness of its own deception. And I, Alex Miller, the obscure software engineer,
had become an unlikely soldier in a cosmic war for freedom. The true battle for Earth's future was now in the balance, playing out not in space, but in the minds of billions.
The Greys, however, were not passive. Their countermeasures were equally subtle, a cosmic game of chess played across the collective human psyche. We observed spikes in targeted disinformation campaigns, manufactured social divisions, and an increased push towards mindless distraction, all designed to keep the nascent sparks of awareness from igniting into a wildfire. It was a silent war, fought not with bombs and bullets, but with ideas, perceptions, and the very fabric of human consciousness. Years passed. I remained at Project Stardust, no longer just a software engineer, but a conduit, a weapon, a vital link in humanity's quiet resistance. The lines between my own thoughts and the alien frequencies often blurred, a constant battle to maintain my sanity and autonomy. But the reports kept coming in, small yet significant victories. A scientist publicly questioning accepted historical narratives, a group of activists demanding transparency from shadowy government organizations, a growing number of individuals worldwide sharing vivid dreams that mirrored the cosmic truths I'd experienced. The counter-protocol was working, slowly, incrementally. Dr. Reed, now a close confidant and mentor, often spoke of the long game. "We may never see the end of this war, Alex," she'd say, gazing at the flickering holographic maps of Earth dotted with points of awakened consciousness. "But we have given humanity a chance to fight back, to reclaim its own destiny. The choice, ultimately, must be theirs." The greatest challenge wasn't just countering the Greys, but preparing humanity for the truth. If the full extent of the deception were suddenly revealed, it could plunge the world into chaos, panic, or worse, a willing surrender to the perceived superiority of the aliens. Our work was to subtly empower, to enlighten, to allow humanity to discover the truth for itself on its own terms, building resilience against the ultimate disclosure. My life, the one I'd known in Austin, Texas, was a distant memory. I was Alex Miller, the man who peered into the heart of an alien deception and chose to fight. The desert outside remained a silent, unyielding guardian of the world's deepest secret. But now, when I looked at the stars, I no longer saw just wonder. I saw a battlefield, a challenge, and a future that was no longer predetermined. The universe was vast, terrifying, and filled with unseen forces, but humanity, finally, was beginning to open its eyes. The fight continues, an unseen war for the very soul of our species. And as the quiet hum of Object 01 resonates deep beneath the desert, a subtle, insistent counterfrequency spreads across the globe, whispering the truth into the dreams of billions. The long sleep is coming to an end.